Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for watching. Today we're going to be testing the 45 ACP out of the 1911, and I get requests to do 45 probably every day, and I haven't gotten around to it yet because I don't own a small like carry size 45. What I do have is a full size or government size 1911 with a 5-inch barrel, and I still think that this is probably the most common 45 ACP, and a lot of people still do carry the full-size 1911. So we're going to test this today. Maybe down the road I will get a smaller 45 with a 3-inch or 4-inch barrel and be able to test some of these rounds out of that gun for you guys. But today we're doing the full-size 1911. Let's get into it. All right, so as always, the ballistic shell I'll be using is my Clear Ballistics 20% ballistic shell blocks, and I have 2 of them out here today. There is a wound track in that second gel block from a different video, but the first block is completely clean. And as always, I'll be using the FBI heavy clothing kit, and someone recently brought it to my attention that I should probably put these clothing layers on in the order that they would be worn. So that's what I did today. We have a denim layer, a heavy fleece layer, a heavy t-shirt layer, and a thin t-shirt layer. So let's get started. All right, guys, the first bullet we're going to test is the 230 grain Federal Premium HST. All right, our HST went in towards the top of the gel block. You can see the wound cavity there. Looks pretty good to me. And came to a stop right there. And you can see that that bullet definitely expanded all the way. And looks like the clothing didn't really affect the expansion on the HST. And the HST came to a stop at 10 inches in our first gel block. All right, next we are going to test the 220 grain plus P Hornady Critical Duty. All right, our critical duty went in right below the HST, and the wound cavity looks pretty similar. Maybe a little bit smaller than the HST, but the critical duty continued down the gel block past the HST and came to a stop right there, and it looks like it just crept in to our second gel block. Now, it doesn't look like the critical duty expanded as much as the HST did, but that is standard for these bullets. They're not designed to expand like the HST is. So the critical duty looks like it performed pretty well, and we know that it stopped right at about 16 or 17 inches because these are 16-inch ballistic shell blocks. All right, we're moving right along, guys. I'm trying to get through these because I am running out of daylight. So next up, we are going to shoot the 185 grain Hornady Critical Defense. All right, this really isn't what I expected from this, but the Hornady Critical Defense went in below our other 2. Looks like the wound cavity grew quite a bit about halfway through that first gel block, probably bigger than either of the first 2 that we shot. But the bullet continued down, left our first gel block, went into our second gel block, and stopped right there. And if it would focus on that bullet, there you go, you can see that it doesn't look like it expanded at all. And I've tested the critical defense 9mm quite a bit, and it always expands a lot more than the critical duty, so I don't think this is how this bullet's supposed to perform. And this is very unlike the critical defense, at least in my experience with the 9mm. And the critical defense stopped at 20 inches into our second gel block. All right, guys, the fourth and final round we're going to test is the 200 grain Sig V Crown. All right, the Sig V Crown is right there just below the critical duty, and it might be kind of hard for you guys to distinguish on the video, but it has almost no wound cavity in that gel. It's just literally the same size as the bullet, whereas the others pretty much all have a large wound cavity where they went into the gel and where they dumped most of their energy. But the Sig V Crown just has a pretty straight wound cavity all the way down the gel, and it stays that way all the way down to where it stopped right there towards the end of our first gel block. And it looks like it is turned backwards, and also looks like it failed to expand. And the Sig V Crown did have a little bit of bounce back in that ballistics gel, so with that included, it looks like it went about 16 inches into our first gel block. All right, here are the bullets that I pulled out of the gel. The first one here is the 230 grain Federal Premium HST, and as you would expect, the HST performed pretty much perfectly and definitely expanded all the way. The second one here is the 220 grain Hornady Critical Duty, and it also performed really well. Like I said, the Critical Duty is not designed to expand as much as the HST, so it did perform well. It did not shed that flex tip. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but this one didn't. And the third bullet we tested is the 185 grain Hornady Critical Defense, and as you can see, this one did not expand at all, so I'm not really sure what that's about. Like I said, I've tested the 9mm version quite a bit, and it always expands really well, so I'm not really sure. I don't think the clothing would affect this bullet because it has that flex tip in there specifically for barriers like that, and the Critical Duty expanded just fine, so I'm not really sure why the Critical Defense didn't expand. And the fourth bullet that we tested was the 200 grain Sig V Crown, and this one actually did expand a little bit more than I thought at first. You can see a couple of those petals did fold back, but you can see a lot of clothing down in that hollow point cavity, so I think the clothing may have affected the Sig V Crown. Well, I'm losing daylight quick, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you all for watching. I'm kind of surprised by the Critical Defense not expanding like that. The Sig V Crown, I've seen it not expand in other calibers, so I wasn't as surprised by that one. But I've never seen the Critical Defense fail to expand, even in the heavy clothing test. So kind of weird. Maybe it was just a lemon that I got in that box. I probably will test that again in the future and see if we can get that bullet to expand or not. But I had fun shooting the 1911. I love shooting 1911s, and I always hear stuff about hollow points not feeding reliably in 1911s. I don't know how true that is. I haven't tested a bunch of hollow points out of these guns, but obviously no matter what gun you choose or what ammo you choose, you want to make sure that that ammo will work reliably in that gun before you use it for self-defense or something like that. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up for me. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.